Hey, Scirocco. Ready to complete the Zelda pack?
Huh? Oh. Hey, Greg. Yeah, whatever you say, man.
You seem a little distracted. Everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. Do you see it?
See what?
There's a guy who's been sitting out there all day staring at me. You see it, right?
Now, dude. I don't see anything. Yes! The Legend of Zelda, Majora and Max, the Butter King of San Francisco.
Hey guys, welcome back to week 2 of Fan Appreciation Month right here on The Completionist. Last week, we played a game you guys sent us, and this week, we're gonna tackle the second most requested game in the history of the show. Plus, helping us out this week is Jimmy. He's a great friend of mine. He edits over at The Decks, but he also makes incredible videos about games and level design over on his own channel, Sunder Gamer, and you might recognize him from the Breaking Bad special, When I Murdered Him.
How's it going, Gerard? Thank you for having me on the show. And I just wanted to ask, now that you're done, or now that you're doing Majora's Mask, you think you're gonna finish the Mario All-Stars pack?
I let you live once before. I will end you again! The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask is arguably the weirdest Zelda game, but strangely, it is also often cited as one of the best N64 games of all time. Maybe even just one of the best games of all time.
Yeah, pretty crazy. It started off as a remixed disc drive port of Ocarina of Time. Then a man named Eiji Aonuma told Shigeru Miyamoto it was boring, so Miyamoto challenged him to make an all-new game in just a year, and so Majora's was born. Aonuma's still directing Zelda games to this day.
But Batman and Mini Skrillex, what about Link's Awakening? Isn't that the weirdest Zelda? And why didn't you wait for the 3DS remake? We all swear it's coming.
Well, you know, I actually love Link's Awakening, and I think it's an amazing game. Maybe I'll even play it on the show someday, but I have to finish the collector's pack first. And the 3DS version, if it does ever exist, isn't a part of it either. Still, if it comes out and it's different enough, I'll do an update video on it.
Oh, an update video? Boring. I refuse to accept the idea of doing one. Can't we just play the Song of Time and warp back and add stuff in later? Warp me back! Warp me back, Scotty!
Is he always like this?
I blame Banjo-Kazooie. The story begins just after the events of Ocarina of Time. Link leaves Hyrule on a search for Navi, his faithful albeit somewhat annoying fairy companion. Along the way, he's ambushed by Skull Kid, who's wearing a bizarre-looking mask, and his two mean fairies, Tattle and Tail.
Ha! Tattletale! Boy, I can't wait to warp back in time and reminisce with myself about that hilarious pun.
That's impossible, Greg.
Whatever, I'm allowed to be angry.
Anywho, Skull Kid steals Link's precious ocarina, scares off Epona, turns him into a Deku Scrub, and runs away, leaving Tattle behind. Tattle and Link form an uneasy partnership and resolve to find Skull Kid and fix everything.
In nearby Clock Town, Link meets the Happy Mask salesman, who promises to make him human again if he gets back the ocarina and Majora's Mask, a terrible artifact which houses an ancient apocalyptic power.
Sorry, Happy Mask Salesman? I can think of about 15 different faces he looks like he's making, and I wouldn't think to describe any of them as happy.
Link eventually finds Skull Kid at the top of Clocktown Clock Tower, where he reveals his plan to destroy the world by crashing its own moon down on itself, unless Link can release the spirits of the 4 giants, which are sealed away in the swamp, the mountain, the ocean, and the canyon.
Link also gets his ocarina back and uses the Song of Time to warp himself back to the dawn of the first day. The happy mask salesman returns him to human form and sets him off on his journey to release the spirits, recover the mask, and save the world of Termina.
Majora's Mask is the darkest Zelda by far, and the apocalyptic setting turns Link into a hero who's not only saving the world, but also healing everyone's hopelessness and helping people cope with the inevitability of death.
In fact, there's a popular theory that Majora's Mask is symbolic for Link's own death.
But Batman, Matt Pat!
And the structure of the game represents the different stages of grief.
But Beardman, Matt Pat!
And that Link's body becomes a Stalfos.
Matt Beard Pat!
Fine, you win, Greg. I won't go into this right now. Besides, who knows if it's true anyway? Either way, it's certainly interesting, and I consider it a testament to this game's story that there's so many different interpretations.
Interpretations or theories? Game theories. Thanks for watching.
What are we even doing anymore? Did Jimmy leave? Come back, Jimmy! Jimmy! I've got ice cream sandwiches, Jimmy, come on!
Even though Majora's Mask was built in the same engine as Ocarina of Time and reuses a lot of the same assets, there's tons of new stuff too, and for what it's worth, everything looks and feels a little fuller and better. The world feels more detailed, scarier. This can all likely be chalked up to the expansion pack, which was required for this game to run.
The tone is a blend of dark, scary, funny, and twisted. That's a rare thing to feel so powerfully from an N64 game, and it's aged fairly well too. It definitely feels more retro and cool than old and boring.
Also, the soundtrack is amazing. It features some of composer Koji Kondo's best and most hauntingly beautiful works. Song of Healing, anyone? Sweet Jesus, that's beautiful.
It's also the debut of Toru Minagishi, who went on to become a famous Zelda composer in his own right.
The writing is also much more mature and out there, similar to the way that much of the dialogue in A Link's Awakening is strange and off-putting. Because of the dark themes and high emotions fueled by the coming apocalypse, the characters become much more relatable than the ones you encountered in Ocarina of Time. It's little things like this that help Majora's Mask to feel like it's its own thing, separate from its much more famous older brother.
Yeah, man, don't you ever wonder what would happen if we warped back in time to when Ocarina of Time first came out and then you...
Frig!
Maybe we wouldn't have to make an update video.
Majora's Mask is built around the mechanic of playing your ocarina to constantly warp back to the same point in time in order to create the exact right sequence for events for the world to be saved. It's a mouthful, but there you go. It's time travel, it's complicated.
Yeah, but that's not even the crazy part. To me, it seems like this mechanic is actually designed to explore humanity's fear of death.
What? No way. Sorry, everybody. Don't listen to Mr. Crazy Pants.
Seriously. Fear of death often stems from the loss of experience, like love or pleasure or beauty or even just your senses and consciousness. By letting you repeatedly examine and re-examine every last aspect of the lives of every character in the game, you're eventually able to grasp everything that's at stake and feel the full, fearsome weight of the end of the world. Everything in this game is designed around this one principal concept.
The feel of the game is largely similar to Ocarina of Time, but it's much more refined and expanded, with fewer temples of greater size and an extreme amount of new and varied gameplay due to the large amounts of masks you find in the game.
The masks come from the game's emphasis on side quests, which is built into and perfectly complements the repetitive 3-day structure. Thematically, the masks function as a way to step into someone else's shoes, or experience something you normally wouldn't have been able to, or just see things from another perspective.
Most notably, the Deku, Goron, and Zora masks completely transform Link, each allowing its own attacks and bringing with it its own weaknesses and new actions useful for getting around and solving puzzles.
Whoa! It's almost like you're saving the world and beating the game by living through the eyes of different cultures. What is this, the Olympics? Yikes, sorry, everybody.
Pull it together, Greg. Man, You know, this might be the saddest game about togetherness I've ever seen. It's amazing how deeply it resonates through the actual gameplay mechanics.
You keep track of all the side quests in the Bomber's Notebook, which brings you around to all the different branching paths and routines of all the various colorful characters in Termina. The gameplay mechanics vary widely between quests too, and even though this game is technically much smaller than Ocarina of Time, it feels much bigger and deeper. And because you're often rewarded with new masks and therefore new skills, you always feel like you're progressing, and there's always more to be done.
My favorite mask has got to be the bunny hood. It's not even technically a mask, but it's really fun to use. You know, now that I think of it, why didn't they make Link that fun to control for the rest of the game? Oh well. Because of the way in which Majora's Mask is deep, it places you as the player outside the world looking in, the way you might feel when doing an in-depth analysis of a complex novel or dissecting symbolism in a film.
All of Termina feels like a giant puzzle waiting to be solved. None of the side quests feel rushed or shallow, and it leaves Majora's Mask with some of the most unique gameplay in the entire Zelda franchise.
For more traditional completionists out there, there's also 52 heart pieces, the most in any Zelda game, and 6 bottles. There's a lot to do.
Yep, and Tingle. Can't forget about Tingle. He's weird. Tingle.
Once you've freed the 4 giants, it's time to return to the clock tower, and at the end of the final day, you summon the giants who work together to hold up the moon and save Termina from destruction.
Defeated, Majora's Mask leaves Skull Kid and heads inside the moon, and Link has no choice but to follow. Inside, he finds a weird, serene field populated with 5 children, 4 wearing the boss masks from the 4 temples and 1 wearing Majora's Mask. Talk to Majora's Kid, and it's on.
What follows is one of the craziest boss fights of all time, and certainly the most disturbing in a Nintendo game. The first section pits you against the mask itself and its creepy octopus tentacle things. This section is fairly easy, and with enough light arrows, your mirror shield, and a little patience, you'll be done in no time.
For a moment, anyway, until the mask transforms into Majora's incarnation. It moonwalks, dances around, and screams freakishly. Couple that with the insane soundtrack, and holy crap, none of us will ever be the same again! It's too scary! It's too weird! It's too stew!
Relax, Greg. This fight's not super tough, and it's over fairly quickly. Then comes Majora's Wrath.
Who's arguably even more stew than the last guy!
Whatever. But the fight does finally start to feel a little challenging at this point. Still, if you're careful enough to dodge the flesh whips, and you're quick enough with your light arrows, you can take her down in no time. Is it a her? Him? What exactly is Majora anyway?
So you defeat the creature, the moon is destroyed, and the power leaves the mask. Tattle and Tail are reunited, Epona is back, and the Skull Kid just kind of returns to normal. There's no big speech. He's just a vulnerable little guy. Naive, even.
The happy mask salesman takes his leave as well, and as things are finally wrapping up, you can't help but wonder whether there was actually any point to anything.
What? The whole game was pointless? But that's so depressing. Quick, Gerard, let's warp back in time and stop ourselves from playing it in the first place.
Actually, Greg, I think the pointlessness itself might actually be the point after all.
Okay.
Look, check it out, Greg. There's no Zelda or Ganon in this game to distract you from the sadness and daily struggles of normal people. And in the end, the evil you defeat seems random and unfair and meaningless, like a bully who can't express his emotional frustrations any other way.
And that might be the actual lesson of Majora's Mask, that there's no true good and evil in the world, only life and death. And while none of us can ultimately escape death, it's better for us all to try and be happy than to focus on everything bad in the world. It's not just heroes and villains. We're all here together, no matter how different or weird we think we are, and no one should ever feel alone.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think it actually brought a tear to my eye.
You'd better take it easy, Greg. Next thing you know, your heart will grow 3 sizes and you'll end up saving Christmas.
Oh, nope. It's just glitter. The tear was just glitter. It's just glitter, guys.
Because Majora's Mask is practically made up of side quests, it's tough to say which ones are bonuses or not. However, there is one awesome thing to get once you've gotten everything else, and that's the Fierce Deity's Mask.
Once you collect every other mask in the game and you head into the moon, talk to the other 4 kids wearing masks. Each of them will take some masks from you and transport you to a dungeon themed after whatever boss's mask they're wearing. Complete all 4 of these and the Majora Kid will give you the Fierce Deity's Mask.
It can only be used during bosses, but it transforms Link into a huge superpowered version of his adult self that kicks every boss's butt in a matter of seconds.
Whoa, look at how cool he is! And look at that weird sword! Awesome! Even if it does look like it would break in a matter of seconds.
There's a few other quests that you don't get masks for, like the gilded sword you get for winning the gold dust at the Goron races, or the Great Fairy Sword for collecting all the stray fairies in the Stone Tower Temple. But compared to the Fierce Deity's Mask, these are all pretty easy to do and feel a lot less like a completion bonus and more just like regular side quests.
You also get an extra line from the Majora Kid about playing good guys versus bad guys with you as the bad guy, but I'll let you guys figure that one out for yourselves. He thinks you're the bad guy because you're giving people false hope about outrunning death.
As with most Zelda games, much of the difficulty comes from the toughness of the puzzles and the layouts of the temples. So while you're not often in danger, there's a large risk of having to tediously retrace your steps rather than actual physical challenges.
For example, the Great Bay Temple suffers from the same problems the original Water Temple does. It's not especially difficult to wrap your head around or execute, it's simply too damn tedious to do anything and everything in the temple.
I hear that. Every room consists of either waiting for platforms, trying to navigate waterways, both at the same time, or switching back and forth between fire and ice arrows to change the water flow.
These things are fine mechanics in their own right, but the controls and menus aren't optimized to work well with any of these tasks. For example, switching arrows takes extra time because of the small animation for equipping an elemental arrow, and you can't have both equipped at once for some reason.
Yeah, plus swimming is hilarious. It's impossible to reliably pull it off in even just a calm environment. Adding moving currents is just sadistic, and don't even get me started on the camera.
Entering the wrong waterway can send you back 10 to 15 minutes, as you'll get stuck in a room that requires you to redo an elaborate puzzle and wait around for a bunch of platforms. If there's one oops I missed it moment, you'll be in for some serious backtracking. Plus, we had to replay the Great Bay Temple 3 times because the Zelda Collector's Pack disc is notoriously laggy and froze twice after beating the temple.
Same thing with the huge main chamber of the Snowhead Temple, where if you fall, you just fall and fall and fall until you've lost a half hour of progress. It's just frustrating level design choices that I think could have easily been avoided.
A few of the side quests were also a little tough to stomach, like that damn beaver race, and the Z targeting made it tough to fight certain enemies, like the Iron Knuckle in a Kana graveyard, but none of this really diminished the overall experience of the game, and in the end, I came out feeling pretty positive.
Completing the game feels like repairing a clock with all its little moving parts. Filling up the notebook was satisfying, getting the masks was a great reward, and the Fierce Deity at the end was an awesome payoff.
Nothing to add, Greg? Perhaps a comment about us warping back in time?
Nah, I've come to terms with it. If we gotta do an update video, we gotta do an update video. Holy crap, did I just go through the 5 stages of grief over an update video?
Majora's Mask has one of the biggest cult followings of all time, and as such, it's tough to say whether or not it truly lives up to the hype. However, I did have an absolutely wonderful time playing it, and it's one of the few games out there where it doesn't really feel like you've beaten the game until you've literally completed it.
Yeah, and on top of that, the beautifully executed themes of loss, coping, and healing really flesh out the world, making this the experience to beat on the N64. It's a perfect end to one of the best collector's packs there is. Minus frame rate issues, game freezing, and memory card bullshit.
With that in mind, guys, we give this game our completionist rating of Completed.
Grief it! And after you grief it, be sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube, or equip if you're over at Normal Boots. Watch these 2 cool videos. Now back to the beard, Skrillex.
That's all time we have for today, guys. So as always, leave your thoughts in the boxes below. Thank you again to Jimmy for coming out. And if you'd like to hear more about what he thinks regarding games and level design, check out his channel, Sunder Gamer, over on YouTube, or click our faces right here to check him out.
Thanks, Gerard. It was so much fun being on the show. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. And next week, guys, Fan Appreciation Month continues with another huge game for us. It's Earthbound, sent to us by Patrick Gursey. Oh, I'm so excited. I've never completed it before. It's going to be awesome. Now, if you excuse us, let's watch Greg stare wistfully into the distance as he comes to terms with an update video that may or may not exist.